If you're looking to become an ID, you may have been drawn to the field because the job descriptions look really, really good on paper. But one question we get all the time in the community is, what do IDs actually do? In this video, I'm going to share with you some of the details of the work environment and the types of tasks I complete daily in my full-time instructional design job. Hi, I'm Scott Schmidt, one of the bootcamp pros on Devlin's team. And before we dive into the details of what my job looks like as an instructional designer, I wanted to share with you a little bit about me and kind of how I got into instructional design. I was a burnt out K-12 teacher, like many of you probably watching right now. The job had become too stressful. There was more and more demands being put on me with not any more time to complete those things. It just got to a point where my physical and mental health were deteriorating, and it just wasn't worth it anymore. I still really liked teaching, and I still do. It's all the other stuff that came with it that made me feel like I got to do something else. And so I decided to resign my teaching job and upskill to become an instructional designer. But yeah, I used Devlin's Bootcamp to upskill into instructional design. And honestly, within just a few months, I had completed the boot camp and landed my full-time ID role that I love. So it was a relatively quick process. If you're interested in learning more about how I went about upskilling, you can watch the video in the description below where I talk about my transition to instructional design. Okay, so in this video, we are going to look at an overview of my team and the work that we do. We're going to talk about the importance of feedback, which is critical in instructional design. I'm going to talk about how I work with and meet with subject matter experts, what we call SMEs. I'm going to go through my team's instructional design process. I'll talk about my work environment and skills that I use nearly every day on the job. Okay? So that's just kind of a roadmap for what you're about to see and learn about in this video. All right, so let's start with that overview. So my role is as a full-time instructional designer for a large public school district. Yeah, that's right. I'm back in a school district, just not in a teaching capacity. In fact, I have nothing to do with the classroom. We actually work very little with teachers. And I'll explain that here in just a moment. My team is 5 people, and we have a director that we report to. Our director is the one that kind of oversees everything and is our go-between between the district and the learners that we serve. All right. We create logistical training. Most of the time, this is what we do. We create logistical training for a variety of roles within the district, not just teachers. And I told you, we actually work with teachers very little. But these roles include, HR, payroll, transportation, food service, custodians. Any group that may have a training need, they come to us and say, listen, we need our staff to be trained on this. Can you create a training for us? And that's what my team does. Okay. We create e-learning and also some video-based learning and some instructor-led learning. Mostly it's e-learning, but because of its flexibility and the learners can go take it whenever they want, they can pause it if they need to. But we do create some video-based and instructor-led training. We also create knowledge-based articles, and this is typically instructions for how to use certain software tools or hardware tools. Because my team is well-versed on writing such instructions, we create these things for the entire district. And it's basically just stored online in one central location where staff can go look up, I wonder how I use this tool, and they can go find the knowledge-based article there. And then finally, we also design and deliver new employee orientation. Now, this is something I really like to do because this is my chance. I still like teaching, and I liked teaching when I left. I just didn't like all the extra stuff that was having a negative impact on my life. Being able to design and lead a new employee orientation is my way to kind of be in front of folks and deliver some instruction and engage them in some conversation and activity. So that's kind of how I get my teacher fix while still being in my new instructional design job. All right, moving on. Let's talk about that feedback. Feedback is absolutely essential for an instructional designer. I get a lot of feedback on when we do major projects. It is required that we get feedback from all of the team members. For smaller projects, we typically require getting feedback from at least one or two, but it could be the whole team if they'd like to provide feedback. Okay. Now, by the way, major projects in my job are the ones that are giant trainings that are going to go to pretty much everybody in the district. These would be things like compliance or cybersecurity, things like that, safety protocols, things like that. All right. Smaller projects are the ones that might be just for one small subset of the district, just a small set of employees. Maybe it's not even required. It's just optional training. But that's what the smaller projects are. Okay. But regardless, we get feedback, whether it's one or two team members or the entire team. I also get feedback from those subject matter experts. As I'm working on the project for them, I need to constantly get feedback from them to make sure that what I'm designing is going to be effective for their learners. And I wanted to mention this. If you're a teacher, this is likely the feedback that you're not getting right now. My guess is you probably get feedback, first of all, after the fact, and probably not very often, and probably from not a whole wide variety of people. And that's the nature of it because your whole day is busy with teaching, right? As an instructional designer, I am getting feedback constantly throughout the project, throughout the day, from multiple people. Now, I want you to imagine how good would your lessons be if you were able to design them and get feedback before you deliver them. Maybe people could catch some things that are like, I think this might work a little better in this lesson before you actually deliver it. How good would your lessons be? That's what you get to typically do as an instructional designer. I meet with those SMEs regularly. Okay, I talked about how I get feedback from them. Well, that means I have to meet with them regularly. We start with an initial discovery meeting. This is where I meet with the SME, the subject matter expert. By the way, so the SME is the one who has come to my team asking for this training that they need developed. All right. So we have to work carefully with them because they're the experts. They know all the content. And so they have to share that with us, and we have to communicate with them to figure out the best way to deliver this training. So we start with an initial discovery meeting where we learn a little bit more about what the needs are. Okay. Then our team, once we do that, then we go back and we start brainstorming some ideas of what this might look like. And then we meet with the SME again to finalize the details of what this training is going to look like. Then, as I'm working on my projects, I will have bi-weekly update meetings with my SMEs. Now, if there wasn't much that happened over those 2 weeks, it may be 5 minutes, it may be 20 minutes, it may be in person, it may be over email. It just kind of depends on what the need is. But we like to keep the SMEs in the loop throughout the development of the project. We will also discuss feedback on drafts of the training. Once I've finally put a draft together, I will share it with the SME. They will give written feedback, but we also will discuss that feedback to make sure that I know exactly what they were looking at and what their thought process was when they gave that feedback. And maybe we'll discuss it and come up with a different idea. Okay? All right. Once all of the drafts are done and we've got a final draft ready to go, we will then have a launch meeting with that SME. And this is where we talk about who are going to be the people that are going to be assigned this training, if it's assigned at all. Maybe it's an optional. We have to decide when it's going to launch. What is the marketing plan if it's an optional training? How are we going to promote it and recommend that people go through that training? And so all those things are done with the launch meeting. Now, by the way, I also work closely with our LMS administrator. That's Learning Management System. And I will talk more about that actually here in just a moment. But they're a big part of that launch meeting process as well. And then finally, we don't just deliver this training and then we're done with it. We want to know if it's being effective or not. So we will have retrospective meetings at 3, 6, and 12 months where we meet with that SME to talk about if the training has been effective and look at ways it could be improved or look at the key parts of it that are working well. All right. So that's an important part of the process too, making sure that the training is being effective. And if it's not, we can look at ways to improve it. All right. Next, ADDIE. If you've been looking into instructional design, you probably are familiar with, or you probably been exposed to this term at least, ADDIE. If you were ever wondering if is this really a thing that happens, or is this just some theory that, is kind of out there? Yes, it actually is a thing. My team uses it very strictly, actually. So I'm going to talk about how my team uses ADDIE. If you're not familiar with the acronym, I'll go over each letter and explain how my team implements the ADDIE process. And by the way, I should mention, Devlin has a whole video on the ADDIE process that you can watch. There's a link in the description of the video in this video below. All right. For now, let's go ahead and get started with how I implement ADDIE on my team. So the A stands for analysis, and this is where we brainstorm what's going to be the best training format for these learners. Okay. We also, in that initial discovery meeting with the SME, we will talk about what the training needs are. But when my team just works individually, this is where we typically brainstorm what is going to be the best training format for these learners. Is it an e-learning course? Is it a video? Is it instructor-led? What's going to be the best way for them to learn? The first D in ADDIE is for design. And for me and my team, this is where we create outlines and design storyboards for the learning. All right. This is where the creative process starts. We kind of map out what's going to go into this. What are going to be the graphics we're going to use? What are going to be interactive elements? What's going to be the language that's going to be used? That's what goes into that design process. The second D is for development. And this is where we will actually go through and build an e-learning course. We will record and edit videos. We will record and edit audio. We will map out what an instructor-led training is going to look like. But this is where we actually start building the training. The I stands for implementation, and this is where you actually deliver the training to the learners. Now, this is where I work closely in that launch meeting with the SMEs. And remember, I mentioned that LMS administrator. The LMS, which is, again, Learning Management System, there typically will be a person at the organization who is in charge of maintaining and running and operating the learning management system, which is typically an online platform where the learners can go to access their training, and it will keep track of their completion of those trainings. The LMS administrator is the one who makes sure that the training gets deployed correctly. So they have to be part of that implementation process. And then finally, evaluation. This is those 3, 6, and 12-month retrospective meetings that we have. Now, I should also mention that in our case, the SME is the one who decides how the training will be evaluated. Then they work with us in these retrospective meetings to talk about, hey, this was the way we wanted to measure this. Here's where we're at right now. This is working well. This is not working well. And we talk about ways we could improve that training. Okay, so there it is, ADDIE. We definitely use it. And by the way, we don't use any fancy tools for this. We just use Google Docs and Google Spreadsheets because they're very easy to share between the team members. We've got templates for the different phases that we use. And because that's standardized, it's very familiar to everybody on the team, and it makes providing feedback much easier. All right, my work environment. This was a big reason I wanted to get into instructional design. All right, obviously I liked creating training and designing learning for learners, but this really was the big reason I got out of teaching, was the work environment. So my role is hybrid, and that means I work in the office 1 day a week and I work from home 4 days a week. Now, there are plenty of roles in instructional design that are fully remote. Some may be fully in person. This is just the one that I landed. Fortunately, I live close enough to this district that I'm able to go into the office 1 day a week. And I actually kind of like it because I get to see my teammates in person once a week. Now, I should also mention, so on the day that we're in the office, we actually don't work on a lot of project-based stuff because that's the day that we're all together. So we have a lot of meetings to discuss how things are going, to get a big picture of where we're headed with projects, get feedback on things that we may need from other team members, maybe talk about troubleshooting or brainstorming other ideas if we need them, maybe figuring out how we're going to solve any potential pitfalls that we're running into. So a lot of that happens on that day that we're in office. All right. I get to manage my work time. I get to flex my hours if I need to. As long as I put in my 8 hours, I can split it up however I want to. All right. Also, within those hours, I get to decide how I spend my work time. Maybe I want to work on this project for an hour today, and maybe I'll work on it for 10 minutes tomorrow when I focus on another project. I get to decide how I want to do that. And as a teacher, I didn't. I was bound to that bell schedule. The schedule said at this time you teach this, at this time you teach that. I didn't have that control, and now I do, and I really, really like it. I get to take breaks whenever I need them. This is huge, especially for a creative role like an instructional designer. You know, there are times where I just get bogged down and I can't focus, or my creative juices aren't flowing, and I can take a short break if I want. I can go for a walk. I can go get a snack. I can go play with my dog if I want. Maybe I just want to lay on the couch and space out for 10 minutes. Whatever I need, I can take those breaks. And I'm actually more productive because I can take those breaks. Because when I'm just not feeling it, I don't just have to grind through it. I can take that break and come back more productive and more energized, ready to go. Okay? I have great work-life balance. This is something I didn't have as a teacher. You may recall at the beginning of the video, I mentioned that I was thinking about and working on school pretty much nonstop. My team has flat out said, Scott, don't work more than 8 hours. Once the workday is done, you're done with work. Don't do it. Come back to it tomorrow. My team very much values that work-life balance, and it's something I really appreciate. And because I'm not thinking about my full-time job constantly, it's opened up time and energy for me to do some freelance work for the Devlin Peck team. You know, I mentioned that I'm one of the bootcamp pros, so I get to do that. I get to create videos like this for you. And I just really appreciate that I have the time to be able to do that. All right. I want to tell you also one story about managing my work time. Because I get to flex my hours, this was huge for me because I recently had kind of an important family issue that I had to take care of. And so there's been a couple weeks here where it's been like, I have to take care of this for these 2 hours in this day, but I'll add it to the end of the workday, or maybe I'll start earlier tomorrow. I can kind of flex that time. Maybe another day it's like, oh, I have this thing I have to take care of for this hour, and I can kind of work around that with my work schedule, which is just absolutely fantastic. That's part of that work-life balance as well. Skills and tools I use. This is very critical if you're interested in transitioning into instructional design from other careers. I definitely recommend understanding adult learning theory. That is pretty key. There are some similarities between teaching children and adults, but there are also some key differences you're going to want to be familiar with. I need to be able to identify the best training method for the learners. That is very important. What is going to be the best way for these learners to learn what they need to know? Communication is huge. I have to be able to communicate clearly and concisely. All right. I can't go on a long-winded message in Microsoft Teams, which is a tool that my team uses. I got to get to the point, and I have to be very clear and very concise about what I need and or any feedback that I'm giving, just to make sure we're not going to cause any delays with misinterpretations of that communication. I have to communicate very clearly with the SMEs. And by the way, this is in writing and verbally. So make sure you're keeping up with your writing and verbal communication skills. Storyboarding is a key thing that you have to be able to do. This is where you kind of start mapping out and designing what the training is going to look like. And storyboarding is something that I think most instructional designers do on a daily basis. I would definitely be familiar with e-learning development tools. My team uses Articulate Rise and Storyline 360 quite a bit. It probably would be a good idea to be familiar with those tools. So those are e-learning tools that are the primary ones used by instructional designers. I use the Adobe Creative Suite on a regular basis. That would be Illustrator for editing graphics, Premiere Pro for editing video, and Audition for editing audio. All right. Now, you may or may not need to know those things. In fact, my team, I was not familiar with Premiere Pro or Audition. I was familiar with Illustrator, but not Premiere Pro or Audition. And my team said, you know what? You've got all these other skills. We think you're a good fit for the job. We'll help you learn those other two tools. So other jobs, I imagine, if you are a good fit for them and they want you, they'll probably train you up on some of those tools. But these are tools that you might want to become familiar with, if at all possible. Oh, one thing I also wanted to mention too, One of the other bootcamp pros on Devlin's team, Robbie Christian, he recently made a video where he goes over the top 3 skills that hiring managers want in potential IDs. And we learned this by surveying those ID managers. So if you want to learn more about those skills, you can watch the video linked in the description below to learn about those top 3 skills. And by the way, guess what? They're in this list as well. So there you have it. There is some validity to that stuff. So I hope that helps you get a better understanding of what an ID job might look like for you. All right. Now, to all my fellow teachers, I want to leave you with this. You likely already have the mindset and the ability to think like a learning designer because you've been doing that for your students. So you've already got an advantage over maybe some other folks that are transitioning to ID from other careers. Now, anybody, as long as you go through the upskilling process and you devote time and energy to learning it, you can certainly become an ID. But you teachers, you already kind of have an advantage because you already have a mind for thinking about designing learning. So keep that in mind if you are thinking about a role in instructional design and how you really could fit into such a role. Okay? But this is for anybody. If you take the steps to learn the additional basic skills that you need, I am confident that you can land a great instructional design job like I did. All right. So I think that'll do it for this video. So I just want to say thanks for watching and good luck in your hunt for an instructional design job. Bye-bye.